You've been criticizing President Trump for his response, sort of the slowness of the response for weeks now, but a few recent polls suggest that public approval has actually increased of the president's sort of job performance. And I wonder why you think the public doesn't see his leadership the same way as you do.
Well, I'm not suggesting what the public sees about his leadership. Let me take the last question first. What I'm suggesting is that I know what has to be done in the following, that faster is better than slower. There's things we need now, not tomorrow, not yesterday, but months ago or a month ago, and the president's not acting. Now, I don't care whether the president's numbers are going up and down. And yes, and I noticed that the president's numbers of the public have gone up in handling this crisis, but they haven't gone up in terms of his presidency.
Gallup did show he is now at 49% job approval, which is a reversal from a few weeks ago. So it's just an interesting development. It does suggest that the American people see him as a stronger leader than you've been maybe characterizing him.
Well, I hope that he does. He's so strong that he's up way above that, because we need the help now.
This is the man. This is their gladiator. That's the champion that is going to step into the ring with Donald Trump. This clearly handicapped man, the sacrificial lamb that was thrown at the altar of God himself in order to stop Sanders. And congratulations, you got what you wanted. You stopped Sanders. That's your champion. That's the guy that's going to step into the room and have ideological combat with one Donald Trump. Sanders has dropped out the race. It is clear who the candidate is going to be that is going to be going up against Donald Trump at this point. And the savaging of Joe Biden has begun. I warned you. Every other burner warned you. Any random burner on the street, just walk up to one. Hey, what's going to happen with Joe Biden? He would take 5 minutes of his time, doesn't matter what he's doing, and he would explain to you why Joe Biden is going to get savage, the failures and the problems with Joe Biden, despite people. Here's the catch. When people are looking at Joe Biden and saying Joe Biden is more electable, they're not looking at details. They're looking at a general picture. Joe Biden has been in politics. That guy was working with Obama. He's been in politics forever. I've been seeing him around forever. I mean, this is Joe Biden. Now, when I look at this and say, well, wait a minute. He had the crime bill. Donald Trump is going to scream, I've been letting black people out of prison, and Joe Biden was putting them in. He had Social Security and Medicare. Donald Trump is going to scream, Joe Biden is going to cut Social Security if he gets the opportunity to do so. And by the way, Donald Trump will do the exact same thing. You think that's going to stop him from saying anything about it? Joe Biden has just been accused of rape. I mean, oh my God. Like the Trans-Pacific Partnership, NAFTA, all of those gross, grotesque policies, all of that is Joe Biden. Donald Trump is going to stand on that stage and he's going to point to all of it. And he's going to say, I am the guy that was pushing for these trade deals, to go against these trade deals. This is the guy that was pushing for it. He's responsible for all of you losing your jobs. I am telling you, even corruption, he is going to point to that grifting family of Joe Biden. He's going to say he's corrupt. He's part of the Washington swamp. He's just like every other creature. He's Hillary Clinton. Mark my words. It is coming. Joe Biden, the Democratic Party, cynically threw him up there in order to, again, stop Sanders. And hey, maybe Joe Biden wanted to do this. But people, wiser human beings, should have known better. Joe Biden, I got to be honest, I don't believe that it is safe for Joe Biden to even bathe himself alone, let alone run the presidency. And yet, nevertheless, this is the man, this is the champion, this is the gladiator, this is the guy who's going to go toe-to-toe with one Donald Trump. Well, let the savaging of Joe Biden begin. And again, like I said, any random burner would have told you this was going to happen. Here's the catch. Sanders is uniquely equipped, whatever you want to think of him, to beat Trump. Because all of Trump's weaknesses, or all of Trump's strengths, are exemplified in Sanders without those weaknesses. Meaning, Trump is a faux populist. Sanders is a real populist. Trump, in the way that he can attack Joe Biden as corrupt and everything else, that just doesn't exist with Sanders. And from the standpoint of an issue of honesty, there's a heavy slant with the notion that the public just considers Sanders to be relatively honest. Like, none of these weaknesses that Joe Biden has are exemplified in Sanders. Here's the other point. You will get independents with Sanders. Here's the other point. African Americans, despite the fact they chose Joe Biden in this race, meaning older African Americans, they would have chose Sanders after the primary in the general. Meaning, you don't lose with Sanders in that case, you actually gain. Even though Joe Biden may come out as winner in the primary, you actually lose in the case of all of these various negatives that are associated with Joe Biden. Nevertheless, here we are. Joe Biden, he's going to be the guy, and he's going to be running against Trump. Let the savaging begin. Welcome to the soapbox. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support PayPal, Patreon. I like to say this content is brought to you by you because in real terms, it is. Your engagement in the show, everything else makes the show what it is. And I appreciate you guys for letting me do it. I'm pretty sure I'm going to lose some supporters because I know a lot of people have strong feelings for Sanders. I'm there with you. Like, this is not a situation of somebody who dislikes, who hates, who is intentionally looking to bash Sanders. I want every opportunity to trumpet the guy who I'm pushing for. By the same token, I mean, my same argument towards Sanders, I feel towards Sanders, my same argument applies to me as it applies to Sanders. This is not about individuals. This is an ideological war of sorts. And you have to deprioritize the individual in this process. If Sanders is going to go out there and tell people to vote for Joe Biden, and I think that is the strategy that lefties have used for the past 50 years, and I think of all the particular positions that an individual can take, that is the weakest. I'm going to say so. I have to say so. How could I not say so? It aggravates me. I don't like weakness in the political space because I don't necessarily think it's ever rewarded. And yet, here we are. And so I'm stuck with this awkward disposition of liking the guy, by the same token, having to point out what I think are to be bad politics. And those bad politics are just based on his own biases. I want to give a super chat that I missed in the last video. Mr. Philbin, MP 2019. It might not be a priority, but should the United States socialists concerned with the presidential election consider joining parties like the PSL, the Socialist Alternative, others that actually run candidates? And for fun, are you prepared for 24 Bell riots? I know this is going to sound weird. Look, my argument is that lefties have taken a particular political strategy that is basically a race to the bottom. And in that race to the bottom, they effectively give over any level of leverage, any level of credibility, any level of attentiveness to the cause to which they originally started for, out of cowardice. Meaning, there's some positions, there's some situations where you just lose. And both people lose. Not necessarily for anything that you did necessarily wrong, but more so because maybe you didn't necessarily have leverage, or maybe the other person played in a way to intentionally make sure that you lose. Maybe you played in a way to make sure they lose. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. That's kind of my point, right? Lefties have lumped in with the Democratic Party. And I'm saying what the left is and what the Democratic Party is are fundamentally different. Wherever those people go, I don't care. What I would prefer is that instead of filtering and flaking into these various parties when generally you believe the same fucking thing, is to have a mass grouping, all of these people who are at these Sanders rallies. I mean, you're talking about millions of people that fundamentally believe the same thing, and yet they're disparate, spread out across the world and everything else, untethered to one another. And so there's no way for them to exert political leverage in a grand unifying way because all of them are disparate. I guess my point is it needs to be webbed together somehow, and I don't necessarily know how that works. I don't know how you do that, but that's what needs to take place. Because at that point, lefties en masse could say, no. Think about what you've been, like, this is diverging in the context of the video, but think about, analyze. Think about the last 50 years. Think about the movement to the right. And ask yourself, why has the parties continuously moved to the right? Why? Why is the argument this far on the right? Lefties kept lumping in, right? Lefties kept joining the Democratic Party year after year after year after year. Okay, then what did you do wrong in that process where your policy priorities got utterly and entirely ignored with the Democratic Party that have gotten to the point, like put this shit in perspective, that has gotten to the point where they stopped attacking a candidate and started attacking his supporters? Why? Ask yourself why. Like, engage that. That's fucking fascinating. Because what that means is that they are so confident that you're going to fall in line afterwards that they can just walk over you. They don't care. Like, that's kind of the point where I'm saying, analyze your situation for the moment. I've been following politics for maybe 6 years. Closely, maybe 4. Where looking back in time, maybe 100. And I have to be honest, I've been learning so much over the past, 8 years from my own misconceptions of politics to what's reality. And the reality of it is, they're not there for you. Like, their objective isn't to give you anything. If Bernie Sanders was running in the race and Bernie Sanders says, I am going to give my support regardless, then the moment that Bernie Sanders loses, Joe Biden is going to do whatever Joe Biden does. He doesn't give a shit what Sanders wants because Sanders has already given his support over. I hope you understand what I mean. Think about the number of people who have their hands out in the political space. People dropping millions of dollars, all of these campaign donations, all of these companies that may be offering positions and whatnot if you lean a particular way. And then you have the public, broke, running from pillar to post trying to make ends meet. Who do they listen to? They listen to the people who are giving them the cash. Since 90% of the elections are won by the side with the most cash. Great. You're on the left. You have all of these big policy ideas that you want to get accomplished. But every election, even in 2016 where they cheated you, even in 2020 where every last one of them lined up against you, and your policy priorities, you believe that for some reason, something that you want at some point is going to get accomplished. And as the country moves further and further to the right, over the last 50 years, that you have something to show for that belief system. I'm saying your belief system is flawed. That's not the way politics works. Think of the way unions work. A union works in coordination with the company. If it feels or gets to the point where the union feels the members are being fucked over, they strike. Why do they strike? They rebel. They dissent. They say, I'm done. The company can bitch all it wants. The company is like, hey, you guys are fucking up our productivity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, those workers get to the point of saying, I'm done. Can the company go belly up? Yes. Do they accept that risk in striking because they understand that basically we're in it together? Yes. Is it possible that the strikers themselves, again, where the company goes belly up, if the company goes belly up, that's because the employer didn't necessarily want to make concessions to the people who are striking. They may even fire those workers per se. I guess I'm making the point that there are some situations that are lose-lose, but that lose-lose to some degree is a win for one of those sides. In the case of lefties, yes. If the Democrats lose, I don't care, if I'm being bluntly honest with you. I don't care because what I care about is an organization from the standpoint of the left that starts to grow a spine and grow a backbone and gain some level of political leverage in our political system. Because as you are now, Sanders has basically phoned it up shop. All of those members, all of those people, all of those groups across the United States, up in smoke. And he is going to run and say, hey, go vote for Biden. The reality of it is Sanders could have backed that group of kids who told Biden, here are our demands. And the catch is, why are you continuously having a race to the bottom and being able, this notion of blue no matter who? We don't care who you put up. Doesn't matter. Person can say we can touch Social Security. They're not Trump, so that's okay. I'm making the point that that race to the bottom is why you have ineffectual leaders now. It's why you look at the Democratic Party now and be like, can't believe these guys are that weak and feckless. You made them that way. You voted them in over and over and over again because you went with this notion of blue no matter who because lefties lumped in. What would have taken place if lefties balked at Hillary Clinton and 10 million, 15 million people left? Said, fuck it, I'm done. I hate to tell you this, Donald Trump won anyway. But what would have been the effect in regards to this level of leverage, this level of all of these people working in unison almost as a group of sorts? That's a different effect. That's a different reality than you end up in now, as opposed to this notion that all of the lefties still fell in line, terrified of Donald Trump, and you got Trump anyway. This politics doesn't work. This cowardice level of politics doesn't work. You've allowed the country to drift so far to the right for so long that there is no magical door. To some degree, if you can organize yourself, you may have to play a level of game where your goal is to make them lose in order to gain leverage and some level of respect in order to get your policy priorities accomplished. This will not be one election fight. This is a siege war of sorts, but you must understand that you're not in that party. This is a fundamentally different ideological battle where both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party fundamentally believe the same thing. You believe something different. And if you do, why are you lumping in with a party that would ensure that nothing you want ever gets done? Your plan for the last 50 years has failed. Call it a day. Come up with something different. My plan is dissent, but not just as individuals in mass, and do so in a way where all of us realize that there are millions of us out there where we can organize and come up with policy, almost like creating a substructure under the political structure. I'm just making the point that your pathway to get anything done is not in the party. If that is not clear at this point, I don't know when that will be clear. I want to start here. Let's start with Trump himself. This is the guy that Joe Biden is going to be running against. This is what we have to look forward to for months.
Xi and Kim Jong-un, you can't be... Never had anything like that. I look up, the guy is already gone. We love you with the red shirts. So now the Democrats are making a pathetic bid to save Sleepy Joe Biden. And you know what? I'd love to run against him, to be honest. Anybody like that, if you can't beat him in a debate, you got a big problem, folks. Big. You can't beat him in a debate, you can't be president. Because what are you going to do against President Xi and Kim Jong-un? You can't beat Sleepy Joe. And now we're going to meet with Kim Jong-un. I don't think so. But he's totally owned and totally controlled by the Washington swamp for many years. 2 months after President Obama put Joe in charge of Ukraine policy, they put Joe Biden in charge of Ukraine policy. Listen to this, and the press will not write it. They say, in totally unsubstantiated charges, every time they talk about him, President Trump has said that his son walked away with a fortune. Now, you know that's a totally unsubstantiated charge. Really? It's not unsubstantiated, it's fact. Joe's son, Hunter, got thrown out of the Navy, and then he became a genius on Wall Street in about 2 days. By the way, whatever happened to Hunter? Where the hell is he? Where's Hunter? Hey, fellas, I have an idea for a new T-shirt. I love the cops, but let's do another T-shirt. Where's Hunter?
Months of that. Months. You're going to get months of that. Day after day after day. When this coronavirus lets up and he starts having these rallies again, place after place after place. Where's Hunter? Where's Hunter? You're going to start seeing the T-shirts. Where's Hunter? Where's Hunter? Why? Because you chose a corrupt candidate. That's what you get with a corrupt candidate. Let's keep going. You have this, which has Fox News has just started to cover. So you're going to have some of this good stuff.
To the Harris campaign and to the Liz Warren campaign and told them about these allegations. And they got blown off. Those two senators didn't want anything to do with it. And these senators had said for many, many years that they wanted to do everything they could to help women in these situations, but in this case, they didn't. I just wonder what the difference is.
The difference is political party. They just don't police their own. Ralph Northam is still governor's.
Yes, the rape charges will be used on Fox News. Mark my words, this will get more prevalent on Fox News. Let's keep going. And now we have Tucker Carlson himself. who goes on a savaging, brutal assault on Joe Biden. Let's hear Tucker. Just the beginning. Day one.
Beneath it all, he was a party man to the core, always sad. All of which means Joe Biden is now the presumptive Democratic nominee. Nobody really chose Biden for this job. He wound up in it by a series of defaults, and it shows. Ask yourself, is Joe Biden ready to lead this country? Could he find his car in a 3-tiered parking garage? Could he navigate a salad bar? And by the way, what exactly is his position on the coronavirus pandemic? Those are the mysteries Democrats now face. Biden has been virtually invisible for the last month. That's not an accident. Joe Biden on camera means more moments like this.
We cannot let this, we've never allowed any crisis from the Civil War straight through to the pandemic of 17, all the way around 16. We have never let our democracy take second fiddle. We can both have a democracy and elections and at the same time correct the public health.
You follow that? Correct the public health. It's hard to imagine a man like that making it through a presidential debate or even staying awake through the inaugural proceedings. It seems likely that at some point Democratic leaders will try to find a way to replace Biden before the November election. Andrew Cuomo is the obvious replacement, but there are many others. Whatever happens, it's worth taking Joe Biden seriously for this moment, now that he is officially, in a sense.
Here's the catch. The coronavirus is the wild card. That's the wild card. If Trump royally fucks up, meaning if Trump just screws up royally and his attempts at trying to blame China fall flat and you have millions of people that are dying and he gets the blame, then Joe Biden can be this mumbling idiot that can't get through a salad bar, that can't safely bathe himself, that can't navigate a parking lot by himself safely. All of that might be absolutely true, and the public will still choose Joe Biden in order to punish Trump for having millions of people dead based on policy. So there's a massive caveat in that just because of the coronavirus. But if this virus, resolves itself and you have a situation where the public, for whatever reason, doesn't blame Trump, and you have savaging like this over and over, day after day, and some of these stories get stovepipe into the mainstream media about Joe Biden because they're like, oh, that's a juicy story, let's run that. Oh God, that is brutal. But again, you were warned. Yes, they were going to call Bernie a socialist. He calls himself a socialist. Yes, they were going to say this old man did this or did that. But basically, those attacks were going to be based on issues of this guy's a socialist, this guy's a communist, etc. Those attacks fall flat to some degree, especially when people get familiar with Sanders. I mean, it's like saying my black friend. Why do people say that? I've gotten familiar with this black guy, and so I have a black friend. The other, othering stuff doesn't apply the moment that you have an individual standing in front of you. My point is, whatever people feel about socialism and all this other stuff may not necessarily apply to the way that they perceive Sanders. They may perceive Sanders as a fully formed person, not as this nebulous thing. That's kind of my point. That's a different level of attack as opposed to being under siege on multiple fronts. I mean, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, all of these items, all I'm saying, you were warned. And let's put it in perspective. It's not like Tucker Carlson is wrong. I told you, they're going to go after Biden, and you're going to have Democrats screaming at people to vote for Trump. Like this person. This person screaming into the forest, into the void. Never Biden equals a vote for Trump. I'm voting Green Party. Vote for Trump. Write in Bernie. Vote for Trump. May I stay home, vote for Trump. If you're a Trump voter, own it. But don't dress it up as protest. It's funny. It's as if he doesn't realize that null is a value. As a software engineer, I can assure you null is a legitimate value. This value could be 0, 1, or null. I don't take a choice. I don't pick either one of these. This is not a race to the bottom. The Green New Deal, not the Green New Deal, the Medicare for All was my standard. That was my benchmark. That was the lowest level that I was willing to go in order to, at the very least, give my vote to a candidate. And Joe Biden has just told me he'll veto it. Not just he'll veto it. Look at stupid shit like this. Right here. Look at these tweets. No more than ever, we need to choose hope over fear. We will beat COVID-19. We will overcome this together. It's so empty and void. It's so 90s. Joe Biden, we need a president who actually listens to the experts and heeds their advice. Now, same person, same Joe Biden. Listen to this. We need to heed the experts' advice. You know what the experts said? Stay home. Because the more of you that are out, the more of you that will get ill. Listen to Joe Biden talking about the election in Wisconsin. This is kind of my point when I'm saying he's null and void to me. He disqualifies himself. To me.
The case where we cannot let this, we've never allowed any crisis from the Civil War straight through to the pandemic of 17, all the way around 16.
What he's trying to say is, don't stop the election. Keep the election going. We've never had something destroy democracy in this way. The reality of it is, you've had multiple states postpone their elections. And I hate to tell Joe Biden this, when 9/11 hit, there was supposed to be an election near that time that they, guess what? Postponed. Now, if you want to make an argument, the Surgeon General made the argument that this was a 9/11 moment. All right, fair enough. Then postponing the election is the most rational and sane thing to do, especially if you care about the population. Do you realize African Americans have been disproportionately dying from this virus? 70% of the people that got killed with this virus were black. Your demographic, the demographic you've been running around screaming about, talking about you've been part of the civil rights movement, lying your ass off. And by the way, do you think Donald Trump would bring up that Joe Biden was lying about civil rights? Fuck right he will, and goddamn right he should. Sanders should have did it. If Sanders didn't use that attack and see if that attack landed in the primary, then it is fair game in the general for Trump to use it. Why wouldn't he do so? This is kind of my point. You have a flagrant liar running for office. And all of this, black people can't raise their kids. Trump has never said anything as racist as that, ever. I hope you understand my point. This is your dilemma. But here's the rub. But before I get to that point, take a look at this. Here's another one. Joe Biden telling people, go vote in Wisconsin in the middle of a pandemic. Immediately after the pandemic, Joe Biden gets on TV and says this.
Do you think you won in Wisconsin tonight? Ordinarily, I'd be hitting you over the head with all these exit polls and crosstabs and things that I know about people all the way down to what they like for lunch. We're not going to have anything until Monday. What's your gut?
No, we're not. Well, my gut is that we shouldn't have had the election in the first place.
That motherfucker, that rat bastard had been telling people to go to the polls, to keep going in Wisconsin. And when asked like a day before the poll, he was like, trust the experts. But what he didn't want to say is stop the election. He didn't want to say that. Because if you say that, you know that you need every opportunity to get elected. And right now, you know that you have the best chance of getting elected today. In 2 months, the public might have a different perspective of you. So you need to get this wrapped up as soon as possible. You were willing to send those people to potentially their illness or their death in order to get your decrepit ass over the finish line because you didn't have the confidence of staying in the race for 2 more months and then going to the polls. How sad and shameful. That's, I'm sorry, disqualifying. That's disqualifying. I don't know why that's not disqualifying. Chuck Todd, here's another one that's disqualifying. Should you keep sanctions on Iran? Those sanctions on Iran is preventing Iran from getting medicine, drugs, equipment, protective gear, all of those things that we have been trying to get ourselves. The death toll in Iran has skyrocketed from the coronavirus in some measure to the United States sanctions. Listen to what is asked of Joe Biden and whether or not he would keep these sanctions going on. This, again, to me, is disqualifying. It shows a lack of preparedness to understand foreign policy. That's the first point, meaning you should have an answer to this. But B, there needs to be a certain level of compassion and empathy to realize that we are putting sanctions on another country that we started. We started this. Those sanctions were started because Trump pulled out of the JCPOA a deal that your boss got done and that they were living up to. So when asked, should you remove sanctions because of this, your answer should just be yes, because they shouldn't have never pulled out the JCPOA. But you're so sleepy and out of it, you don't even know that. And Chuck Todd, most oblivious man on the planet, doesn't ask the follow-up in the vein that I just made the point. Meaning, the moment that Joe Biden says this, Chuck Todd should have followed up, well, wait a minute. Donald Trump pulled out of the JCPOA. Iran was living up to the deal. Your boss got the JCPOA done. I mean, you don't believe to some degree that they should remove those sanctions? I mean, those sanctions are to some degree illegitimate, at least by virtue of your boss and the deal that was made. Chuck Todd doesn't know to ask that question, though. That's a question that I'd ask independent media.
Would you lift sanctions on Iran temporarily during this pandemic?
I don't have enough information about the situation in Iran right now, and I'm not sure there's any evidence that there's a lot of speculation from my foreign policy team that they're in real trouble and they're lying. But I would need more information.
$1,634 new cases, 66,220. Keep in mind, this is a country, what, a sixth, seventh, maybe the size of the United States, maybe a fifth. 66,220, 1,634 new cases, 4,110 total deaths. Yeah, I'm sorry, that's disqualifying. I mean, just the heartlessness of it. Yeah, I heard they're having a hard time, but, you know, they could be lying. Whether they're lying or not is irrelevant. That's my blunt response. That's all. Like, that's the foreign policy. You're going to get that guy. And you're telling me that I should vote for that? Why would you vote for that? That's kind of my point. This is the point that I'm trying to get at. Why would you vote for that? Why would you vote for that? And then this. You don't think Trump is going to relitigate this? They impeached Donald Trump in the House for basically withholding aid for political favor, supposedly. Look at this. Joe Biden is literally standing here bragging about doing the exact same thing. Why wouldn't Republicans make this an issue during the campaign trail?
I remember going over convincing our team, or others too, convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over for, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, I'm not going to, or we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch.
You know, as I watched that, he's such a flagrant liar. That didn't happen that way at all. That took place over months. Joe Biden compressed that down to like 8 hours. And it's like checking his watch and all of this other stuff. That's just political casting. That's some script that he made up. That's not real. His level of lying is, oh my God. And you're replacing one liar with another liar. Like, this is kind of my point about why would you back that? But this is their standard bearer. This is their champion. This is a person who they chose. So it's going to get what they get. I will say this. Part of me didn't even want to do this video, because the entire point of Joe Biden has nothing to do with his weaknesses or him being cognitively challenged. It has nothing to do with any of that. The brain trust of the Democratic Party is effectively run by neoliberals. You're talking about the Obama and Clintonites. The Obama and Clintonites, or let's say the brain trust, looks at a situation and say, what do you prefer, Sanders or Biden? Sanders removes them, meaning he fundamentally changed the party for a generation. I mean, the people who are going to come behind him are just going to be like him. Not to mention the norm, the hegemonic norm of what it means to be a Democrat changes. The pressure that he puts on the other Democrats in Congress changes. Everything changes. Now, from their standpoint, Trump winning doesn't change anything. Yeah, you might piss people off, but ultimately Trump winning the race is different than Sanders winning the race, which gets to this level of we are willing to accept some level of subsistence in order to stop Sanders. Meaning Biden is the level of subsistence that the Democratic Party is willing to accept in order to preserve power from neoliberals who effectively have had power in the party for the last 50, 60 years. That's what's taking place. That's why I was like, God, man, I don't even want to do this video. It has nothing to do with Biden's weaknesses. There are some people who would be like, oh, wow, Biden has those weaknesses. Yes. But the issue is not whether Biden has those weaknesses or not. They didn't care whether Biden had those weaknesses. The strength that Biden had was in the primary. That strength was to fucking stop Sanders. And that's what he did. He did his job. Now, if Biden can somehow shuffle over the finish line in the presidency, great. If he can't, oh well, that sucks, but that's better than Sanders taking it. I think that's the way it's being looked at. I've thought that from months ago. Like, because there's no way to look at Joe Biden and believe that that's the guy, that's our standard bearer, and not think he's going to get bullied. Now, again, COVID-19 pandemic, that creates a situation where that stuff gets somewhat up for grabs and depends on whether or not they blame Trump for it. If they blame Trump, Joe Biden wins. That's my prognostication. If these numbers continues to get progressively worse and do so for months after month after month after month, and you have this number going to the millions, and then you have the number of deaths going into the hundreds of thousands, Trump will get blamed for that. I don't know how you deflect blame to China. Maybe. I don't think the American public is that stupid, but maybe. I don't know how he gets out of that. He can have as many dancing press conferences as he wants. At the end of the day, if you are doing something that is getting people killed, they may hold you accountable for it. So, I mean, if they do, Joe Biden shuffles across the finish line. That's what I think happens. Matt W. So how will you vote or not in Biden versus Trump? Oh, I'm not voting either. I'm not voting for either. If there's a Green Party candidate, we can vote. Baltazar, I can't wait until Joe picks Hillary Clinton. Oh, don't say that. Don't say that, Baltazar. Don't say that. Then the DNC declares him unfit, and we get the 216. This time, it's really her turn. 2020 edition, the remix. Oh, don't say that, Baltazar. Don't say that. Because she'd lose again. I'm sorry. I think she'd lose again. And not just I think she'd lose again. I think it's just to some degree even worse than that, or more perverse than that. You will have those people who would be screaming, yes, it's her turn, it's her turn, this is her turn. Let's put Hillary Clinton as VP. But I don't think it's going to happen. Like Tucker Carlson there saying Cuomo, I don't think they're going to put anybody in like that unless they just say, fuck it, Joe Biden is just massively unfit to run. The problem is the moment that you say that, who are you going to put in? If you say anybody but Sanders, lefties who might have backed Biden just out of, weakness, won't back you to some probabilistic number. Meaning you lose voters. Because those people are going to get pissed off that didn't choose Sanders. They're going to say, wait a minute, this guy didn't run in any race. This guy got no votes. Sanders was able to do that in state after state after state. This guy has nothing. How are you giving this guy the race? And in doing so, you're going to lose some of those people that you would have probably kept with Biden, meaning you're probably stuck with Biden if you're looking for any chance to actually win the race. I don't think they're going to replace Biden. I don't know how they replace Biden outside of Biden, falling out or something. Also, it doesn't seem like Biden wants to be replaced. I think he really does want to be president. Even if he can only make it for like 6 months, he can at the very least say, I was president. So I think that's where we are, unfortunately. But I don't think he's going to choose Hillary. I think he's going to choose a black woman. Well, definitely a woman. But my thought was Kamala Harris. But I don't know. Who knows? I'll end it here. This one is going way, way long. Like, share, subscribe.